150 episodes, bitch! Exhausting just to think about. It's not that important a milestone in neurology terms, but fuck it, it's a lot, and so here's an extra-length episode. Like with the 50th, we're going to my own personal stash of VHS tapes to survey the advertorial contents. Only this time, there aren't any adverts. No. Tonight we're in a wilderness of public information films. You know what these are. One or two have even showed up during Have a Break. Commercial-sized, commercial-formatted messages from authority not to do stupid things, like drink and drive, or turn right when there's a motorcycle in the way, or own a dog.
What's more important, a dog or a human life?
They'll learn you. The ones you see the most are the ones for the most important issues, like the plague, which caused something of a renaissance for reform, or in more stable times, road safety and fire prevention. There are other subjects, but you don't see them as often, except when they're specifically needed. For instance, you might see advice about preparing for a cold snap in November, but not so often in April. Unless, of course, there's a gap to fill in a commercial break. Because it's not always possible to sell advertising time, especially back in the day when the regional ITV companies were doing the buying and selling, and for 10 years they were doing it for 2 channels. Long-term viewers of this programme, i.e. my dad, will be aware that I live in one of these smaller regions, and there were slots they just couldn't give away. Mornings on Channel 4, or Sunday afternoons on Channel 4, or almost any time on Channel 4. Or the absolute stone-cold dead of the night on ITV.
Night time.
Yep, night time in Granada. Well, technically TSW, but Granada provided the programming and the presentation, with the cat and the spooky music and everything. This is the 22nd of December 1992, penultimate week of the year. It's also approximately 4:30 a.m, that time when the night starts to gradually regenerate into morning. The point of temporal mitosis, where one day slowly emerges out of the skin of another. If there really is a witching hour, this is it. Halfway through it, in fact. Why are we visiting this strange, unknowable never-sphere? Because the 12 Tasks of Asterix is on. There have been a bunch of attempted adaptations of Asterix. Live action is just wrong, and there's been some decent stuff in the CGI era, but that doesn't really look right either. They were designed in 2D, and they really only work in 2D. 1976's The 12 Tasks of Asterix was, until recently, the only original Asterix movie, i.e. not an adaptation, and it will forever remain the only one to have actually been made by Goscinny and Uderzo themselves. Goscinny died only a year after it came out. For this reason, it's still one of, if not the best. It even has Oliver Postgate.
In the year 50 BC, all Gaul, now known as France, was covered with impenetrable forests, where calm, peace, and quiet reigned supreme. Only the birds... hey, wait a moment. Wait a moment. I said in the year 50 BC. Right, thank you.
But obviously, being massive fans of the little Gaul throughout my household, we set the VCR to record it. And that was when I learned that you don't get adverts anymore that late at night. Just public information films. Full commercial breaks solely consisting of public information film. And in 1992, that meant you could get almost anything, because the library was incredibly deep. Only the ones reacting to specific events, like the 3-day week, had ever been withdrawn. Otherwise, just about every PIF ever made since the start of the colour era was available to broadcasters to fling on anywhere there was a gap. For example, at 4:30 in the morning. The first break mainly consists of old-school classics, the type that gave the format its classic image. Grainy, degraded telecine footage with an audible audio pop at the start. Like this.
Good morning, madam. 2 pints and a fresh orange juice this morning, I believe.
You're not my milkman.
Well, no, hardly, madam. Actually, I've come to read the meter.
But you're not my usual meter reader.
No, he asked me to do him a favour and take a quick look at the meter while I'm here.
Well, why are you here?
I cannot tell a lie. I'm from the council. Trained.
Oh, dear. But the man from the council was here last week.
Know him well. Told me all about it. Nasty business.
Well?
To tell the truth, I'm trying to sell you something. And it would be easier if we could discuss it inside.
I don't really believe you, know, but
Well, actually, of course, I am trying to con my way in and steal the family silver.
Not everyone is what they seem. Before you let strangers in, ask for proof of who they are, or make an appointment.
What is he doing with those candlesticks?
You see what I mean? In a commercial break today, and despite the fact that the message is still more or less relevant, this would seem impossibly antiquated, like a penny farthing on a motorway. Thing is, it wasn't even a decade old at the time of recording. Strange Caller, because that's its name, was made in 1983, right when the likes of Hugh Hudson and Ridley Scott and Saatchi were revolutionising advertising in a way that couldn't help but leak into the public information sector. There are PIFs later on this very tape that are newer and almost unrecognisably more sophisticated. Some are even shot on VT, but like I said, in 1992, vanishingly few PIFs had ever been withdrawn, and they still had more or less the entire history of the format to draw from. So plenty of them in the classic fuzz and pop style were still in the rotation and are still on this tape. Like this classic one about not turning your back on an obviously dodgy bloke trying to gain access to your home. What is he doing with those candlesticks? Whatever it is, it's probably best left a mystery.
What is he doing with those candlesticks?
This next one's newer.
Every year, about 1,300 children are killed or seriously injured in cars.
Oh, like you don't hear it automatically. It might be shot on videotape rather than film, but it's still classically styled. A stern but caring type celebrity in the Lynn Folds Wood mould, Jane Asher in this case, sadly regarding some random children before explaining how you, personally, could be responsible for the death of one or more or all of them.
This car's doing 25 miles per hour. The man in front is holding a baby. In the back, someone's holding an older baby. A 3-year-old is loose on the seat. The front baby's head hits the dashboard. The rear baby is crushed by the adult. As for the 3-year-old... Now look at this crash. The babies in the front and back are in proper rear-facing baby seats. The 3-year-old in the back is in a child safety seat. All they would have suffered is slight bruising. Protect your child. Fit rear seat belts or child safety seats.
This one in particular tended to show up on TVAM a lot towards the end of its existence. The advertisers started to dry up a bit after they lost the franchise. Great structure here, showing the bad, fatal version first, then the good, happy, right way, and then back to the bad timeline, this time in agonising slow motion, just to hammer it home. And also no logo, no slogan, just a freeze frame and a final command from Asher. Of course, this PIF is basically obsolete these days. Rear seat belts are standard, and have been for so long that even the vast majority of used cars have them. But I can remember a time, around about when this was taped actually, when it was pretty impressive that we owned a car with 4 seat belts. And 4 doors. And 4 wheels, actually.
Protect your child. Fit rear seat belts or child safety seats.
Yeah, I'd like to know what she was going to do about it, because I could have told her that.
John, don't, please.
Do as Mummy says. Is he always like this when you're out?
He has his moments. Don't you, sunshine? Here, go on.
I've kept him round the ear by now.
Oh, that'll never help, Sylv. Just needs a bit more love than most.
Driving me mad.
Oh, if he gets on top of me, I can always talk to the social worker when she comes round. I mean, I don't expect her to know all the answers. Shouldn't be fostering kids if I thought it was that easy. It's nice to know there's someone like her to talk to if you do have a problem. And you can't go through the things that he's been through and not have a problem.
Oh, you can't. Get down off of now.
Anyway, all I'm saying is that when you're fostering kids, you're not left all on your own. John, come on.
If you think you could give a child a loving home, ask your social services department about fostering.
Fostering. Always needs promoting. This one is at least honest about it not being a bundle of laughs. Cheers, then. There's not a huge amount to say about this one. It's a slice of cinema verite, only obviously not quite so verite it is scripted. But it does sound pretty close to a real conversation between actual humans, and as I said, a damaged child is authentically difficult. Once you accept he's not one of the really bad ones, of course. They'd shown him shitting in his hands, smearing it on the floor and rolling around screaming. It probably would have proved counterproductive for encouraging foster parents. Voice at the end of Patrick Troughton, which demonstrates that this is another old one, as he'd been dead for 5 years when this was taped, making this seem even more like a ghost transmission from a dead past. There's a reason they call it a hauntology.
If you think you could give a child a loving home, ask your social services department about fostering.
These are the eyes of a man whose skill depends on his sight. Normally, he makes it a rule never to take any risks.
These are the eyes of a fucking imbecile, more like. He somehow forgot to put his damn goggles back down again, despite hitherto being notably rigorous about his personal safety, and also being a professional fucking welder.
But today he forgot.
Today he forgot. How in God's name do you forget something like that? When it's your fucking job. And most importantly of all, when they're right there on your idiot's forehead. This, perhaps even more than Strange Caller, really encapsulates the classic pre-branding PIF. The film flicker is righteous, the sound cinematic, the direction pure melodrama, and the slogan stern and Swiss.
Make sure you don't.
That's the end of this break, but I'm going to zoom ahead and do the next two because I just don't care anymore. Armageddon, no future. Besides, they're very short. Almost as if no one expected anyone to be watching at 4:30 in the morning. The second one, largely but not exclusively, features newer material than the first. The very first one invites comparison by covering similar ground to an earlier one.
Take a normal child and trap it inside a body that doesn't work properly in some way. Or take a normal child and trap it inside a mind that cuts it off from other people. Take normal children who've been hurt physically or distressed emotionally for years. And then add to each the handicap of having no family. Children like these face a future in care unless there are people who'll adopt them and help them feel normal. Life with a child with special needs is not easy.
See? We told you about fostering earlier, but if that's not hardcore enough for you, why not go the whole hog and adopt some disturbed animated children? Like a caricature of Nicholas Lyndhurst as Stan Laurel.
Neither is life for these children without families to love them. Whatever your circumstances, If you'd like to know more about adopting children with special needs, ask your local council for details.
Oh wait, he's been adopted by Andy Hamilton. Never mind then.
To some children, a new beginning can mean a happy ending.
Unless you're that welder, you'll have noticed that this is very different from the fostering one. That was a neo-realist slice of life. This is symbolic, eerie, vaguely Eastern Bloc animation, accompanied by minimalist electronic soundscaping. The fostering one might have been made in the 80s, but if it was only just. This, however, belongs to that decade like leg warmers and feathered mullets. And no wonder. It was made by Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel, the Hallison Bachelor of the 1980s. The creators of Max Headroom and makers of the underrated DOA with Dennis Quaid, and the Super Mario Brothers film, which basically killed their promising career dead at a stroke. But never mind that, DOA is definitely worth checking out.
A new beginning can mean a happy ending.
I just didn't think when you go on holiday you could end up in jail. I feel terrible about Steve. His mum and dad couldn't afford the bail, so he's stuck in a prison. He'll be out there for ages now.
Back with the verite styles here, you'll notice. Could have been directed by Ken Loach from a script by Jeremy McGovern, or Alan Bleasdale. Wasn't, of course.
I don't remember smashing the place up at all. I was just having a few drinks and, well, next thing I knew, I'm waking up in jail next morning.
It's grim, it's grey. Despite being in colour, it might as well not be. And it's northern. And it features a man walking through a desolate landscape of steam and despair, constantly going over the events that led him to ruin his family forever.
This guy from the consul turns up, and we thought, great, he's going to get us out now. He said, no, he couldn't. He was really helpful as far as he could go. He gave us, advice and told us about the lawyers, but he said he couldn't give us any money for the bail, so he'd contact my mum and dad. That's to raise 14,000 quid.
Of course, you might not be getting a Boys of the Black Stuff vibe from it. It might be more like this. Only with thuggery in place of homosexuality. Again, it's relatively newly made in 1992, can't be more than 5 years old at the most. But from modern perspectives, quite an interesting throwback to the days when PIFs didn't need to display a single word on screen at any point.
When I got home, my mum told me that they had to remortgage the house. I wish I hadn't done that. My mum's having to start work again, and I can't help. I got no money. I can't carry on like this. I haven't even got my best mate.
If you get in trouble with the law abroad, you pay the price.
Even the closing voiceover, which comes from the normally friendly Gary Watson at his angriest, seems like a grudging sop to whatever people might have got the message. Its abruptness and conciseness, in fact, suggests that it may very well have been slapped on the last few seconds at the last minute, and the PIF was originally going to just stop.
I can't carry on like this. I haven't even got my best mate.
No words, no logo, no slogan, nothing to tie it in with a specific scheme or even a specific government department. Not even a stated message, just the inscrutable power of your superiors. The one and only flourish is the expressionistic Blade Runner-esque closing shot. Flint hard and ice cold, despite the flames at the end. Talking of which, this one's another classic. Made, I do believe, in 1989 and used well into the aughties, by which time it had, of course, acquired the Fire Kills logo. Fire Kills, the red-headed stepbrother of Think. Even older but less iconic. Technically, the Fire Kills campaign has existed since 1988. This was one of its launch PIFs, but it wasn't until 10 years later they started using the words on screen. I think they're better without anyway. Bifurcating the message with both a specific slogan and a more general campaign logo just waters both down. Anyway, here's an Argos Grant Mitchell being menaced by the terrifying voice of his own subconscious fire-related guilt, personified as a screeching invisible harpy.
Living room overloaded socket! Oh, spoil sport. Come on, there's something. Matches, come on, go for the matches, darling. Daddy put them there for you. Come on. Oh, Daddy! You put them out of reach. Matches and twice too full and the heat's too high. Don't. Oh, don't. Something's come on. Oh, the heat is too close to the curtain. Behind the door. Look what you've done. Bye-bye, house.
Freud and Jung would fight with sticks over the interpretation of this.
Don't give fire a chance.
Petrol on a boat is dangerous, so don't spill any. Use a funnel. Check for leaks in fuel lines and connections. Wipe up splashes carefully.
Finally, in this break, the exception. An old PIF. Film flicker and popping sounds very much in evidence, and one of the most uncompromising you'll see. Starring Graham Garden as the Anorak from 1990s children's BBC continuity. None of that is true. Wait for it. Well, when you display such a shockingly casual attitude to petrol, sooner or later you are going to explode.
Petrol or gas. Check for leaks. Take care.
The PIF regards his fiery demise coldly because it's a PIF. The late John Shrapnel at least sounds concerned at the end when he says, "Take care." But then he sounded downright irritated earlier when the petrol was actually being spilled. So who knows what's going through that man's mind? Again, no on-screen text or imagery, just the simple fact of a man digging his own watery grave.
Take care.
"20 minutes later, the film is over, 6 o'clock and therefore TVAM is imminent, and a few more PIFs pad out the space in between.
There's no one I know who's had a good time on heroin.
Well, it's crazy to say that you don't get addicted because you do.
Heroin screws you up. Yeah, still.
Many people nowadays are addicted to heroin by smoking. Your friends drift away from you, they don't want to know you. So who wants to know a drug addict?
I've lost all my friends. I've lost them all.
I'm pretty sure these are actors, but I'll give the script the benefit of the doubt and assume it is adapted from real testimony.
I didn't have a good time. It's just it's like a vacuum. You don't. It's not like living at all. You just do nothing all the time.
Now I'm broke and it's no joke. It's hard as hell to fight. Don't buy it.
It's just not worth trying it. Before you know it, you will be caught in that trap, and you're not taking the drug because it's nice. You're taking it because you have to take it.
All to the sound of White Lines Don't Do It, which was actually about cocaine, but never mind. Not only that, it was only retrofitted as an anti-drug song late in the day when they realised it wouldn't get radio play without some half-assed condemnation thrown in. Hence this bit.
I wish I really never got involved.
And if you get hooked, baby, it's nobody else's fault, so don't do it.
This PIF was one of the last commissioned as part of the original Heroin Screws You Up campaign of the 1980s. By 1992, crack and ecstasy have arrived, so concentrating on the horse no longer made sense. In fact, the replacement campaign, The Effects Can Last Forever, has essentially been and gone already. Fortunately, this is another one with no text at all, so it can still fit. In fact, there's nothing. No text, no voiceover, just vox pops looking over our shoulders intercut with a cartoon version of a Hubert Selby Jr. novel starring Kathy Burke. There's even less to it structurally than that Don't Go to Foreign Jail one, which at least had a slogan at the end. This one is purely passive. There's no way in for the viewer. You have to actually engage with the message in order to absorb it. Whether that's an effective way of doing something like this, I don't know. I do know that as a 10-year-old, I had no idea what this was about the first couple of times because it washed over me like rain. But then it wasn't aimed at me. I never even knew what drugs were.
I just feel like I've wasted a lot of my life, you know. About 6 years of my life just ran down the drain.
It's just nothing. Nothing but trouble.
By giving their blood, people like these save the lives of others.
This one's pretty straightforward. Jesus Christ implores you to give blood, you monsters, while some empty seats generate guilt.
Every hour of every day, donated blood is needed by someone.
I can never seem to find the time.
I would, if I knew how.
But the supply of blood must meet the demand.
Well, I need all of mine, don't I?
Hello. It's nice to see a new face.
I've never given blood before, but I just had to help. Giving blood saves lives. To enroll as a blood donor, call free on 0800 300 333 anytime.
I miss that old logo, with the crown and everything. That was when it was the Royal Blood Transfusion Service, of course, hence the crown. Now it's just a department of the NHS. They do still use the later variation on that crown, double heart, whatever. You can tell there's very little to say about this one. Moving on. This is probably the most contemporary one in the lot. It's as soaked in the late 80s and early 90s as the fostering one was in the late 70s and early 80s. It's even got a McGann, albeit the one out of the four that isn't pretty. An example of public humiliation used as a tool in the war on litter. I quite approve. It's just a shame there's relatively little use of Ted Bellingham. Instead of the litter making a loud noise, he could materialise with a megaphone and bellow, "Use a bin, you fuckers!" Tango style. Maybe a couple of years later he would have. Then again, if they'd done that, they'd lose the punning punchline. Which took me altogether too long to get.
Don't drop her. Drop it in the bin.
Finally, another popping and clicking blast from the past.
Sheep in an unfenced area. The grass always looks greener on the other side of the road.
I used to see this one a lot living in the countryside. Both the PIF and the thing it's depicting.
Sheep are a farmer's livelihood, so please, drive slowly and watch out.
Michael Jason there, a man who can't utter a syllable that doesn't sound like its heeding is of life or death importance, telling road users not to run over barlands. To be fair, this is worthwhile, since sheep are among the thickest of all God's creatures, liable to just stand there and go bar when an enormous roaring pollution-belching vehicle approaches them. The final shot worries me. Did that sheep get out of the way? Or did they actually break their own rule and run it over for the sake of the freeze frame? A split second before it got knocked to the ground, the radial tyre splitting open its flesh and spinning guts and wool everywhere. Of course, it's all an illusion. The sheep was never in any danger. There's no visible car in that shot. But you think there is? Don't lie, you do. The camera takes its place, and thus, through the miracle of audience identification, so do you. Film theory, bitch. Probably. I don't know. What am I, Lindsay Ellis? What do you want from me? Leave me alone.
Watch out.
And with that, we return to the rather wistful farewell screen of night time and prepare for one of the last days of TVAM. Public information films are sometimes regarded as a thing of the past, something that we used to do but don't anymore. It's not true, of course. They had a bit of a renaissance, in fact, when the plague hit and suddenly even the BBC was showing them between programmes, for the first time since the AIDS crisis. But the basic form has never gone away at all. Even now, late at night, you're likely to see, in place of advertising, some sort of message about buying a fire alarm, or being nice to disableds, or not driving like a prick. We still make them, just not as much. They used to be commissioned through the Central Office of Information. Once David Cameron and his cut-happy government got in, it became a casualty of austerity. The few PIFs that are still made are handled perfunctorily by the Cabinet Office and are almost exclusively for the major campaigns like Think Road Safety and the enduring Fire Kills. And the occasional stimulus response like COVID. What they have in common is the breadth of the audience, which is to say just about everyone in the country. They certainly wouldn't waste time and money on something as narrowly focused as a 30-second film ordering welders to remember their fucking goggles, or sailors to mind the petrol doesn't spill everywhere, or insanely specific warnings like,
polish a floor and put a rug on it. You might as well set a man trap.
As for example. Or even,
you never know what's round the corner, so don't run.
Jesus, can we do anything? Maybe that one was just made for people who live in silent comedies. Watch out for bananas on the ground. Don't let the protagonist happen to you. You've been watching a Bob the Fish production. Thanks! If you haven't found it already, be sure to check out our website at bobthefish.org.uk. Literally hundreds of videos not unlike this one that will make you laugh, think and realise new things or your money back. Which works out great because they're all absolutely free. All of this is possible thanks to the not unique way that Bob the Fish productions are paid for by you, the viewing public, via Patreon. For a donation of as little as £1 a month, not only do you ensure that I still have food and shelter so I can carry on making these programmes, but you could become eligible for a whole host of cool extras. New video essays, special event live streams, all my content a week in advance, and my book on the history of the BBC, Rule the Waves, chapter by chapter as it's written. And some cake, if you go out and buy a cake and eat it while you're watching. And if you don't want to support on a monthly basis, you can make a one-off donation via Coffee. It all helps stave off scurvy. bobthefish.org.uk. You make it what it is.